What's up, guys? Thought I'd give you a little update on what I've done with the El Camino like the past year and a half since I've did the other video for this thing. So I remember before I wasn't happy with having the stock exhaust manifolds and the original AC on this thing. So that was one of the first things I changed. I ended up going out and getting these Summit Racing brand ceramic coated headers. They're what can I say? They're freaking awesome. They're not like the crazy high end ones. These ones are kind of like, I don't know, middle of the road. They're about, I don't know, $300 to $400. 5/16 flanges. I don't remember the tube size on them, but they're just regular ass headers for a small block. Fitment was pretty good at the time. I still had the original AC on this car, so this side was a little tight getting in there, but it was no big deal. You know, I took the starter out. You know, I was replacing the starter and the transmission cooling lines at the same time, so I took all that stuff out and just made a little bit more room to get it in there. It was a pain in the ass getting in there around the original evaporator. I'm not gonna lie, it was a huge pain in the ass. On the driver's side over here, probably can't see it. I doubt it. No, it's way down in there. Might be able to see it. The two bolts poking out there. That's my proportioning valve that's mounted down there on the frame. It was a little close to one of the bolts, so I just relieved it with a hammer before I put it in, just because I didn't want that thing, you know, bouncing around with the engine running and knocking on that bolt and annoying the crap out of me. So they've been in for a year and a half, and I haven't had a problem with them. No leaks, nothing. I used the gaskets that came with them from Summit and the bolts, and you know, I started up, got a heat cycle through it, torqued the bolts down again, and I haven't had an issue with those things since. Let's see, what else did I do on this thing? So right after I did the headers, I upgraded the radiator and the cooling fans. I had a 3-row Champion in this thing, and it was in this thing for a while, like, I don't know, 10 years. Never had an issue. I know a lot of people talk shit on Champion, but I've had them in this thing and my Datsun, and no issues whatsoever. But after 10 years, it did start kind of like seeping a little bit. It's like, I'm not going to spend the money to repair the freaking thing. I don't know, it was like a $200 freaking radiator. So off to the recyclers that thing went, and I replaced it with a Summit 4-row aluminum. I want to say it was right around $300, probably about the same price as the Champion. The finish on it came a little nicer. It's a little bit shinier, yeah, ordered it fit for this car. I didn't have to modify the mounts. It just dropped right in, hoses lined right up, transmission cooling lines went right on with absolutely no problem. Super easy, nothing to it. And I got a big radiator for it. So the fans I'm using are made by Derali, I don't know how the hell you say that. Just Google it. I don't remember the part number on this thing, but it's made for the 70 to 72 Chevelle, El Camino, Monte Carlo, you know, GM thing that it all uses the same damn part. And I'm like super happy with these things. It's dual 12-inch fans, probably barely see it in there, and it's got these cool little rubber flappers that open up when you're going on the freeway just to let the air through, you know, with the force of the air, instead of, you know, having to force all that 70-mile-an-hour air through the fans themselves. And they work bitchin'. Like, they move some freaking air. When I first put them on, I threw some paper up here against the grill with the hood open as it is now, and turned the fans on, and it would suck paper to the grill with the hood open and everything. So it's like these things move a crap ton of air. Coupled with that massive radiator, like, this thing runs icy cold. Even in the summertime in traffic, it barely gets up over 200 degrees. Climbing hills with the AC on, no problem. Going on the freeway, this thing's in temperatures like, I don't know, 170, and that's with the temperature gauge in the cylinder head. So I have absolutely no cooling problems with this thing. Along with that fan shroud and fans, I'm running the fan controller, made by the same company, whatever the hell it is, Derali, whatever. When I was originally looking at these things, There was a lot of bad reviews, but there's also some like good ones. So I went ahead and went for it and figured I'd just freaking try it out. This thing is a shit. It works, bitchin'. It's been in the car for over a year and a half. Never had a freaking problem with it. It's like the way it works is it's like pulse width modulated. So it's not like a hard start like regular relays or some fan controllers where the fans are either on or off and that's it. When it turns on the fans, it slowly ramps the power up, so it's not like a big massive draw on the alternator and the electrical system. It slowly turns them on, and it only gives them enough power to turn them as fast as they need to go based on engine temperature. So I'm not sitting here running these fans maxed out when the car is sitting there at like 190. You know, it's no big deal. They just kind of turn on, creep a little bit of air. Once they get on the freeway, they shut off. You know, it's awesome. It's also they've also got a almost like a jumper, not like a jumper, I don't know what the hell you call it, but it's basically when you turn on your AC, it sees that signal and it will automatically ramp the fans up 70% more. So if say you're running at 20, it's going to ramp them up to 80, and it'll sit there and hold that 70% on the fans the whole time the AC is on. So you constantly have air flowing through your condenser up here in the front of the car, and it works awesome. Super happy with it. I've got it in this car for a year and a half, and I've got it in my Datsun. I don't know, I think I've had it in that thing for a year, and I love it, dude. Never had a problem. So I don't know what all the bad reviews are about. Maybe about bad wiring or something. Who knows? Let's see. So yeah, I put the headers and the fan and the radiator in this thing, and had it like that for a while. And it was good. Everything was happy. But then, you know, my AC started acting up. I got it charged, and it wasn't really holding a charge, and it was pissing me off because this thing gets hot as shit in the summertime. The black interior and small windows. So I saved up a bunch of money, and I bought a vintage air system. I also got this accessory drive kit up front. This is made by Marsh Performance. I was having a little bit of issues with squealing belts, and the power steering was dying, and the alternator was crap, and I just wasn't happy with all the accessories on the front of the engine. I was running the stock stuff from the original 350, and everything bolted up okay to this engine, but it was just a little bit different. I think the cylinder heads, being aluminum, had slightly different dimensions. So the belts weren't lined up perfectly straight. I was having to use some wonky spacers and a bunch of hokey shit just to kind of get it to fit on there, and I just absolutely hated the way it looked. It looked like crap. So that went, and this kit was super easy to go on. Like it came with everything you see here. Alternator, I didn't use their water pump because I got an Edelbrock, so I kept the Edelbrock, but it comes with the alternator. I got this teeny weeny little bitty AC pump. I think it's a Sandin 7176, and if you look at it, it's like smaller than a damn alternator. That thing is the shit. It's way better than that massive, huge thing that goes on that side. So that's a Sandin 7176. Came with the belts and a new power steering pump and all the pulleys, everything. All the mounts, all the stuff you need to get it on there. I ended up getting it on Amazon because it saved me on shipping. I don't remember how much it was. I think it was like $1,200, which is not bad for these like front drive accessory kits. Some of the other ones are like, geez, they were upwards around like $2,000, you know. So this one went on, and it really doesn't matter what the dimensions of your cylinder heads and all the mounting points, because they come with like space. They call them spacers, but washers basically, for you to get everything on there and lined up. And it works. With the small blocks, it works on both the short water pumps and long water pumps. So I've been super happy with it. It's been on the car for a couple months, and I haven't had a freaking problem with it. Belts don't squeal, doesn't throw belts, none of that fucking silly shit. It just works, and it looks really good. I think this one is called the Sport Track, and I liked it because it was black. It's all black powder coated. They had some really nice looking pretty billet stuff and all that kind of shiny shit. But I drive this car a lot, and I don't want a bunch of shiny shit that I'm gonna have to polish constantly. You know, I got some chrome on there, but that wipes super easy. So I got this stuff on there, and it's pretty damn maintenance free, man. I like it. So at the same time, while I was putting that kit on the car, I also did the vintage air install. And this is an original factory AC car. So I contacted Vintage Air, told them what I was doing. I was just replacing the original system with, their kit, and told them that I wanted to run this pump down low on the passenger side. The Vintage Air kits, they're made to bolt directly to this car, but they come with I forgot what Sandin pump, I think like a Sandin 508 or something, I don't freaking remember. But it comes up over here high on the driver's side, kind of where the original pump was, comes with all the mounts and everything. So if you want to get that kit, there is a bolt-in option where you don't have to do anything, you just bolt the crap into the car and it's gonna work. But I didn't want my pump there. So I told them, hey, I'm getting this March kit, it comes with this AC pump, and this is how I want to run it. And they said, hey, no problem. What we'll do is we will give you the regular kit for the car minus the AC pump, and we'll give you unfinished hoses, and you just install everything, and then you just got to terminate your own hoses however they need to be terminated. So that's how I did it, and it was a lot. Like, I did a little bit of research before I got the kit, watched some YouTube videos and stuff, and it's pretty involved on one of these cars. The inner fender wells have to come out, so all your heater lines, AC lines, and everything run through the fender well into the original fresh air intake, which is behind there. So the fender well has to come out. The entire interior has to come out of this car. That was also kind of scary. I've torn cars apart before, but just having to take this thing apart, there was a lot in it. The whole dashboard, everything had to come out. So when I did that, I rewired the whole dashboard. I installed a cool new tachometer that's made to fit these crappy sweep tachs, or sweep dashes. Works cool. I think it's made by crap, I forgot the name of the company. Jeez, I don't remember. I'll probably remember later. But it goes right in, and it looks cool. I mean, I still have the dumb little hole for the original clock, but whatever. I'm not too concerned with that. The Vintage Air kit does replace your original factory controls. I know in the older cars that use cables, they've got like cable adapters that make it so you can control their system with your original controls. On these cars you can't, because they've got that crazy ass vacuum capillary system that's a huge pain in the ass. And that was part of the reason why I wanted to replace this system. The original system was because this motor doesn't really create a ton of vacuum, and then having this insane vacuum system in this car that controls everything just made that even worse. So when I got the Vintage Air, all that vacuum crap went away, which I'm pretty happy for. You also lose, on the original AC cars, you lose your vents. I know there was one down here, and there's also one over here underneath on the driver's side. So you lose those vents, which is kind of a bummer, but honestly, with the original system, they didn't work that great anyway. So that's the Vintage Air. Pretty much hangs down right in the original place. When it's in the car, it doesn't look like it's not supposed to be there. It blends in just fine. So that's the new set. That's the new kit, where it's the evaporator and heater core all in one piece, which is kind of scary, because you're finishing off all these lines and putting in your O-rings and everything like that to hook up all your lines with. And if you put this thing all back together and you've got a leak at that one of those O-rings, the dashboard and everything has to come back out, which I was really freaked out about. So I was like super careful putting that shit together. Like, I made sure to lube them up, the right torque settings, everything, just because I did not want to take that fucking dashboard back out. It was a fucking nightmare. I mean, I did a lot of work to it and rewired a bunch of stuff while I was at it, but still, it took me a long time to do that. And I don't want to take it back out. Which leads me to the only real, I guess, complaint that I have about the Vintage Air system is that, you got your heater lines, and they run into the car through the fender, and they go all the way through the body up to the evaporator inside the car. So when you want to replace your heater lines, say in 10 years or whatever, when when it's time to replace them, they start looking like shit. You cannot get to them while they're inside the car. There is no maintenance. You can't perform any maintenance on it while it's in there. The dashboard has to come back out in order for you to drop that evaporator off the firewall and get to the heater lines. So I kind of wished that they would have done something where you could send the heater lines back out the firewall like the original ones were, you know, and not have to run them all the way into the car. That's the only thing I like about it. Also, you know, when you first fill your system full of antifreeze or, you know, or coolant or whatever, and you go to fire this thing up, if you didn't do a good job with those O-rings, you have a leak in your car, and that's not cool. I'm not a huge fan of that. But I guess in order to get a really nice updated AC system, that's part of the thing you have to deal with. So you know, I went out and I got really nice fucking heater hoses because I don't want to have to replace them any fucking time soon. So I spent a lot of money on some really good hoses. Let's see what else. Okay, so I did and that was just recently that I did this. This was, I don't know, February when I took this car all apart, and just sort of did the whole job at the same time. I did the vintage air, the little March kit up in the front, and I also did a Fitech install. I think this one's the 30001 kit. This is the 600 horsepower. Go Street, Go Easy, whatever, Easy Street, I forgot whichever one it is. It's like the 600 horsepower entry level fuel injection kit. I was kind of wanting to get the power adder because I thought it'd be really neat to do nitrous on this car, but I didn't go for it because I know myself, and eventually, you know, 100 shot won't be enough, and then a 150 shot won't be enough, and then I'll end up blowing this damn motor up. So I just kept it simple because after all, this car is meant to be like a cruiser, you know, road trips, that kind of shit. It's fun to take to the drag strip, but you know, I can't be chasing ETs with this car, otherwise I would end up destroying this thing. So yeah, I did the Fitech install all at the same time while I was doing vintage air and that kit in the front, because I wanted to just, while I was in there, I wanted to get it done, fix all the wiring, you know, rerun the wiring, upgrade some stuff while I was at it. So I think I got it through CPP out here in California. I got the whole kit from them because they had the Fitech system, and then they also sell a kit for the fuel system, which is a Tanks Inc. Gas tank, and comes with all the lines you need. The filter regulator, I think it's like a LS style filter regulator, fuel pump, fuel sending unit, everything. It all bolted into the damn car. Fuel tank was a little bit of a pain in the ass, so I'm not too happy with the fuel tank. The original had a solid filler neck that went out. This one has like a rubber hose that you use to connect a separate filler tube to the actual tank. I don't like that. It makes it kind of floppy. What else? The gaskets sucked. They leaked. The O-rings leaked that held everything in. So I had this gas tank in and out of this car like 4 fucking times. It's a fucking nightmare pain in the ass. So knowing what I know now, you know, I would have gotten a lot of the sealer stuff on the threads, and you know, I forgot what the stuff the guy was using, but it was like this tacky glue shit that I used on the gaskets and the threads of the bolts and everything like that. And that fixed it after having a tank in and out of the car 4 times. Lessons learned, I guess. Another thing, I had an issue with the Fitech when I first went to fire up the car. It came with a pinched O-ring on one of the injectors, so this thing like was flowing gas out of it all over the place. It was making a huge mess. After looking at some forums online, I figured, okay, it's probably one of the injectors. Pulled the injectors off, and I could actually see like the pinched O-ring. Contacted Fitech. They said they'd send me a brand new injector. Gave them my email. Jumped through all the hoops they wanted. An injector never came. So I just ended up, you know, I guess with the one that was pinched, after it's sitting out of the car for a while, I guess the pinched mark on the O-ring went away. It just kind of like reformed itself back into an O-ring shaped. So I just greased it up, stuck it back in there, and I haven't had a problem with it since. Besides that, the Fitech system has been relatively pain-free. You know, it just works. I can fire the car up. I don't have to pump gas. This thing used to be pretty cold-blooded. Used to have to pump a lot of gas into it with the carburetor, let this thing warm up for a couple of minutes, and you can throw it in gear and it dies again, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I know. A lot of people say, oh, you just tune your carburetor or whatever. I don't want to have to deal with that. You know, it gets affected by altitude, or sorry, carburetor gets affected by altitude, temperature, all this other kind of shit. It's just a controlled leak, and I wanted something to just offer a little bit more drivability. And the Fitech has delivered. I'm going to say with the butt dyno, I don't feel any extra horsepower, but like now, I don't even have to be inside the car to start it. I mean, this thing's ran for a couple minutes just to give myself some room in the garage for this video, but I can just reach in, prime the fuel injection, turn the key, and it just fires up, and it's idle, and it just sits there and runs. It's great. I love it. It's so much easier. When I shut the car off, I don't get any dieseling. If the car is warm and say I stop at a gas station for a few minutes, I don't get any of the vapor lock. None of those issues. They've all gone away. And when looking at the engine, you can't even tell it's on there. It looks like a damn carburetor. You wouldn't even know that I've done this. So that was pretty involved though. There was a lot of wiring I had to do. And just in general, cleaning up the wiring on this car was something I was wanting to do for a long time, because obviously the Fitech, the Vintage Air, the fan controller, all the instructions say to run a separate power wire to the battery, and it looked like shit having all these wires running to it. So redid the wiring up here in the engine out of these new battery terminals. They're kind of hokey. I might change them up again. But I just sort of built off the original wiring in the car. So there was a lug here, right here. You'll probably see it. Now it's that red thing. So I've upgraded that. So now I have a 4-gauge wire feeding that lug, going to a 10-gauge wire to the bus bar, which feeds the power to the whole car now. And then another one of these 4-gauge wires goes down to the starter. And shit, where's the other one go? I think the other one goes and it splits off, and it actually feeds the Fitech, the fans, and the AC from that. So it just, I mean, granted, I still have like 3 wires going to the battery, but it just looks nicer than having all these like 10-gauge wires coming up to the battery with nets on them and all that kind of shit. So everything, you know, I've installed all the relays down here behind the battery. You can't see it, but everything has been re-relayed. Originally there was a 10-gauge wire going from here over to the horn relay, which acts like a bus bar. It was just a really funky, hokey way that they wired these things back in the 70s. So now that was upgraded to a 8-gauge, just because I have some more accessories in the car. And then when I took out the original AC system, I used the original wire feeding that AC system. It was a 10-gauge wire coming off the horn bus bar there. So now that wire still runs inside the car, but now it feeds a separate fuse box that I added. So now I don't have a whole bunch of jumpers and stuff coming off the original fuse box. It all comes off a new one that's controlled by a relay signal from the key. And it's all modern fuses. So that's when I'm running, you know, my aftermarket gauges, my brake lock. I've also installed a brake lock on here. It's just some cheesy jet shit. So now all of those circuits are protected properly, much nicer and neater than having to run a bunch of jumpers off the original fuse box. Let's see, what else have I done? Oh, yes. I did a Willwood master cylinder install. So when I was taking the signal apart, putting in the Fitech and the AC and all that kind of shit, all the fender wells had to come out. So while they were out, I just painted them. And then also, when the evaporator came off of the firewall, I repainted my firewall, and everything was looking super pretty and really nice, and I loved it, except for like the butt ugly original master cylinder was rusty as shit, and the booster looked like crap. It was all rusty too. Again, I went through CPP. I think it was a kit that I found on eBay, and I was like $250, something like that. And it is a Willwood polished master cylinder with an 11-inch stock GM booster. Installation was pretty easy and self-explanatory. You know, you bench bleed it, follow the instructions, throw it on the car. The only issue I had was well, actually I had a couple issues with this. So there was an adapter that comes with the master cylinder that makes it so it can work with either mechanical or boosted brakes. It's almost shaped like a little bullet. I'll call it a bullet. And it's just a spacer that's supposed to take up the difference in the push rods between manual brakes and boosted brakes. So I didn't know, or I probably just didn't see instructions, whatever. Basically, when I put this thing together, that bullet was just a little bit too long. I think maybe by like an 1/8 inch, maybe 3/16, somewhere around there. And what it ended up doing was that it was adding some preload to the brakes. So it was applying just the tiniest amount of pressure on the front brake lines. So when I took this thing out and started driving it, my front brakes were dragging. Called up I called up Willwood, and they said, okay, it's either your pedal adjustment inside the car, which mine was good, or they said, check out this bullet, you know, go ahead and unbolt your master cylinder. You just pull out these 2 bolts right there and pull that. When you unbolt those, if you feel like the master cylinder is being pushed off the brake booster, then you have some preload on there. And mine was being pushed off by, you know, 3/16, 1/8 inch, somewhere on there. And it was an easy fix. I didn't have to re-crack the lines or nothing. Just pull the master cylinder off, take the bullet out. I just chucked it up in a drill press, you know, filed it down a 1/16 at a time, trial fit. I did that until I felt no preload, bolted it back on, didn't have the issue. The other thing I had with this master cylinder, and it's really only going to affect guys in these GM cars where the master cylinder sits at this crazy angle, is in the divider in the middle of the master cylinder. There's a little hole that allows the brake fluid to flow from chamber to chamber, and they just call it a balancing hole. Well, when your master cylinder sits at a crazy angle like that, all your brake fluid flows out of your front chamber and into your back chamber. And I called up Willwood, and they said they don't have a fix for it. You know, the guy said, just go online, look at some tutorials. So all I ended up doing was just, I tapped that little hole, threw a bolt in there with some thread sealant, plugged it, and threw the lid, you know, topped the back off, threw the lid on it, and it's been good to go. Haven't had any issues. Let's see what else I've done. So when I was doing the vintage air in this thing, you know, obviously the dashboard had to come out. The seat had to come out, obviously, too, just so I can get to it. So I reupholstered the seat while it was out because the original one was starting to fall apart and look like crap. I think I got the foam and the upholstery kit from PUI or PMI or something like that. It's one of the first things that shows up on Google, and they're pretty damn cheap. From my experience, I will never ever do that again. Fuck that shit. It was the most worst pain in the ass. I actually ripped the upholstery in a couple spots, but you can't see it when it's in the car, so it's all good. But from now on, I will pay the money and have somebody who knows what the hell they're doing upholster my cars, because that was a pain in the ass that I will never ever do again. Let's see, and I think for now, yeah, that's all I've done on this thing. Really, the next thing I want to do on this car is I would like to upgrade the suspension. I've got a little bit of Hotchkiss stuff on it now, but I'd really like to replace the upper and lower control arms and the trailing arms. Probably do some nice tubular stuff from QA1. I've been looking at that, and I like to get rid of the stock gauges and put some aftermarket stuff in there. So, but for now, I'm just going to drive it because it's been down for a long ass time, and I'm just going to drive it and enjoy it. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. Talk to you guys later.